everyone. I'm not sure if this is working yet. Can someone maybe just give me a comment if you can hear me? And I'll just wait a minute or two before starting. All right. I don't know if anyone's okay. Good. Thanks, Jamie Lee. All right. So I guess I can get started with a little introduction about myself. So my name's Sandra, and I'm a 2015 Schulich leader at Queen's. And last year I graduated my undergrad degree in engineering chemistry, and now I've stayed at Queen's to pursue my master's in chemical engineering. And I'm specifically interested in polymer chemistry and a lot of the green chemistry applications of that as well. And in my free time, when we're not in a COVID situation, I like figure skating, and I've also been, this past year, I've been involved in coaching Special Olympics, so that's been quite enjoyable. And I also just like reading in my spare time, so if anyone has any good book suggestions, please hit me up. So I'll just get started with some of the questions that I got sent beforehand. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to just type them in the comments, and whenever I see them, I'll try to go ahead and answer those. So the first question here was, when did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in your current discipline? So just a little bit more broadly, I would say that I had a good idea that I wanted to pursue engineering kind of late in high school. I'd always been someone who had really enjoyed math and kind of excelled at math. My interest in science kind of came a little bit later, and I just thought engineering was something that I could really kind of put my interests of math and science together to kind of solve real world problems. So once I did decide to go into engineering, of course at Queen's we have a general first year. So basically we were just taking lots of courses in just kind of general physics, mechanics, some general chemistry courses and whatnot. So it really gives you a good opportunity to kind of explore different things that you would have never been exposed to in high school. And throughout this, I think I changed my mind of what discipline I wanted to go into every week. But a lot of the chem-eng things excited me. The chemistry courses, I think, were pretty interesting to me. And throughout my first year, I remember kind of missing some of just the pure, kind of more theoretical science that I had been used to learning in high school. So that was one of the major kind of driving forces, I think, behind me choosing to go into engineering chemistry, which is a program pretty unique at Queen's, where it's duly accredited as a chemical engineering and a chemistry degree. So basically how it works is you take all the core courses that a chemical engineering student would usually take, and then you also take additional chemistry courses on top of that, including a lot of the lab courses, so you get that practical hands-on lab experience. And then in terms of where I'm at now, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm specifically focused on polymer chemistry. And specifically, I'm interested in something called emulsion polymerization, where you basically, there's an oil in water, so we have to find a way to stabilize the system. So a lot of the kind of thermodynamics behind that excites me. So I'm doing some research into that right now. And I really kind of fell in love with this type of research when I was doing my fourth year thesis, actually under my current supervisor, Professor Michael Cunningham. So during my fourth year, I was doing a lot more bio-based research. So we were actually modifying starch nanoparticles to use as stabilizers for these systems. And my project has changed significantly since. I'm no longer working with the bio-based materials, but a lot of kind of the things I learned during my fourth year have been very transferable to what I'm working with now. So the second question here is, what do you see as Canada's biggest challenges and opportunities as it relates to your discipline? So I'd say one of the biggest things in chemical engineering, for sure, like not just the polymer side of things, is the environmental concerns. So obviously there's lots of concerns about climate change and even single-use plastics. Like we see all these concerns about straws in our ocean and harming wildlife. But one of the biggest things is that the general public often sees things in a very black and white fashion, whereas we as scientists, I think, need to do a better job communicating what we can do to help our planet and kind of what steps the general public should be taking and kind of what things we're looking for. Okay, third question here, and feel free to jump in with any in the comments if you have any questions as I go again. So the third question here is, do you have mentors and how did you obtain and benefit from them? So first of all, I would say going through, well, I guess starting early in my high school career, I had some great high school teachers that kind of always pushed me to, because I came from a very small town, and I think they just kind of pushed me forward and in a way that to kind of make myself believe in myself a little bit more and realize that there were opportunities out there that I wasn't even aware of yet. And throughout undergrad, I would say I just talked to a lot of upper year students, tried to get a lot of advice about courses. I know in terms of fellow Schulich leaders, so Jamie Lee, for instance, was also in engineering chemistry a couple of years above me, so I went to her and asked a lot of questions about the program. And I remember asking advice when I was in first year and trying to decide on my discipline. And then when I was doing research during my undergrad, I was paired with a graduate student. So he was a great resource in just learning the ropes of how things work in the lab and learning how to start thinking independently as a researcher, and just kind of general advice about pursuing grad school, like kind of helping guide the decision of whether I should stay at Queen's, whether I should go elsewhere, and that type of thing. And above anything else right now, I would say that my biggest mentor right now is my current supervisor, Professor Michael Cunningham. He's been pretty great, not just in the scientific aspect, but just helping me guide and build myself professionally, whether it's trying to become a better scientific writer or just trying to find other professional development opportunities. Conferences aren't really a thing this summer, but they would have been, which would have been a great chance to meet new people in the field. So another question I have here is, what do you suggest to younger Schulich leaders getting into this field? So for STEM fields in general, or really for anything in that matter, I would say that my biggest piece of advice is to just keep an open mind and to not be afraid to try new things. I remember coming out of high school, you really don't have a lot of exposure to things. and you really, and then unless you have this exposure to things, you can't really figure out what you're interested in and what you would want to pursue a career in at the end. Like I say right now that I'm really interested in pursuing a career in polymer chemistry, hopefully getting my PhD and moving into a career in industry. But who knows, that could change in the end too. But right now I'm just building a lot of skills that would be transferable to other fields as well. I would also suggest trying to focus on developing skills outside of your coursework. It's one thing to just be able to write tests well, but it's another thing to really focus on building things like your writing skills and your project management skills that can really help you in whatever career that you're going to be pursuing moving forward, and things as teamwork as well. And joining clubs outside of classes can be a great way to start building these skills. And I'm sure a lot of you tuning in have a lot of experience with this already, just given the nature of the scholarship, I think. Okay, next question here is, what would your ideal career path look like? Okay, so I think I've already answered this partially. So currently I'm doing my master's, and as of now, I'm planning to promote straight to my PhD. And then afterwards, I would ideally like to pursue a career in industry. My current research now is actually a collaboration with a company in Germany. So that's kind of providing me with some unique insights that not everyone gets while they're pursuing graduate school. So I think that's been very valuable, and has also given me this idea that working in industry may be for me in the future. Okay, I think I have a question here in the comments feed. Okay, what is the biggest obstacle you faced in undergrad and how did you overcome it? Okay, I think there were actually many obstacles that I faced in undergrad. So first of all, coming straight from high school, I was from a very small town. So in that, we didn't really have as many opportunities in terms of course selection and just exposure to kind of different STEM fields. So I found that my first year engineering program, some of the courses were an extreme learning curve for me, because I hadn't necessarily learned all the prerequisites in high school. So that was a big adjustment, but in the end, I pushed through and it was fine. Another thing was just the workload in general. An engineering degree as it is quite a lot. And then in my case, when I combined that with extra chemistry on top, it was a real challenge. So I think the biggest thing just to keep in mind is that a work-life balance is really important, even if it seems like you could be working on schoolwork 24/7. You're never really going to have enough time to do everything you want to in a day, and that's completely fine, but it's important just to take care of yourself in the end and really build that support system that you can go to when you may be struggling. And I think late in my university career, I realized how important sleep really was. I know my mother was always on me asking Sandra, like, how are you sleeping? That type of thing. And then I just always assumed that, oh, like I have all these courses, like I can't possibly be sleeping like 7-8 hours a night. But it turns out if you just put your classwork on hold for a little bit, get some sleep, it's actually a lot easier to do it the next day when you're actually rested and can focus and can think things through. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that answers everything. And there have also been some struggles. Queens is pretty good because we have a high proportion of women, but there have been a few issues where it can feel kind of isolating at times. But again, that just speaks to the importance of always having a support network and having hobbies outside of school that you can go to as a good release. And I realize now in the whole COVID situation, I think these things may be harder now than ever to get, but they've also never been more important. All right. Yeah, and if anyone has any more questions, feel free to put them in the comments there. All right. Another question here is, what do you find most exciting or interesting about your field of study? So I'm particularly drawn to research. I would say that I'm just a very curious person, and I don't know, research just gives me a lot of excitement because there's just so many unknowns, and you're studying something people have never studied before, so you really don't necessarily know what's going to come out of that, and that can be scary for a lot of people. But in my case, I just find it more exciting than anything. And I specifically, in my specific field with chemical engineering and polymer chemistry, the problems I'm working with, I really see my solutions potentially being applicable to things that I come across in everyday life. For instance, a lot of our group does work in water-based coatings. So kind of trying to get away from solvent-based coatings, which contribute to volatile organic compounds being released into the atmosphere. So these water-based coatings are things that you can even find around your house, like the latex paints that you paint your walls with, the adhesive on the back of a sticky note, sealants, different paper coatings, that type of thing. And it's just everywhere. So it's just exciting that the research I'm doing could potentially be applicable across so many things moving forward. All right, I have another question here from Aiden. Sorry if you already answered this, but have you done co-op? And if so, what was your experience? Do you have any tips for getting a great placement? Okay, so I haven't actually done any co-op like outside of research experience. So I'm not the best person to be answering this, but I can give you some general tips about just trying to get a great placement. I would say something that's important is just you're probably going to get rejected or just don't get a response to a lot of places that you apply to. So I would just apply to as many places as you can, and also try to network and see and try to meet people from different companies and try to get a bit of an in that way. I do know a whole bunch of friends who have had great co-op experiences, and if that's something that you're interested in, I would definitely recommend, because it can set you up great following your university career. I hope that answers a bit of your question. Sorry, I can't help more on that one. All right, where are we here? I'll move on to another question here. Can you tell us about any other curricular activities, such as study abroad, research, conferences, etc., you may have had, and any advice you would give to other Schulich leaders? Okay, so I think I've already commented on the research before, but kind of also as a follow-up to Aiden's question with securing a co-op placement, I can give some general tips about securing a research position. So this would generally be in a university lab under the supervision of a professor. So many of the research positions for undergrads at whatever university you are won't actually be advertised, is one of the first biggest things. So if you are interested in working with a specific professor, I would just go ahead and contact them. It for sure helps if you've had them as a professor in one of your previous undergrad courses before, and you've kind of been able to develop a relationship with them and they know who you are, kind of thing. And if there's also some positions that are advertised, and especially for these, when you email a professor, it's really important that you make sure to attach both your CV and an unofficial copy of your transcript, because a lot of times if you don't do this, there'll be many other applicants that a professor would potentially have to interview or have one of their grad students interview. So oftentimes, if you don't include these two major documents, the professor basically doesn't want to chase you and ask for these things, because there's lots of other candidates who have probably sent these things already. So that's like sending these documents up front is a good way to give you a better chance of actually getting an interview. Another experience I had, so actually right after I finished my undergrad, my current supervisor sent me to a week-long short course related to what I'm researching now down in the States. So that was pretty great because it was actually mostly industrial professionals that already have PhDs who were at this course. And the lecturers were from all over the world and were pretty established in the field. So from that, I got to meet a lot of great people and make a lot of connections. And I think all of those will for sure help me with my career going forward. And in terms of conferences, I went to a few Canadian chemical engineering conferences as an undergrad, not to present my own work, but just to kind of go and check out kind of what was going on and what research was being done. And that can also be a great experience because, again, the networking thing is really important. So you can meet a lot of great people at these types of things. If you're an undergrad and you're thinking of grad school, and it could be a great place to meet a potential future supervisor, especially if they're at a different school. And I personally was supposed to attend a conference in Prague in a few weeks, which obviously isn't happening, but there should be many more opportunities in the future, especially if I'm continuing through to do my PhD. All right. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to comment away. I can do my best to try to answer anything. All right. So the last question I have on this list here is, what kind of extracurricular activities are you involved in, and how do they help you as a student? So currently I'm serving as the Vice President of Master's Students of our Chemical Engineering Graduate Student Association. So I've just started in that role, but I'm also kind of bridging the gap between our chemical engineering students and the whole Society of Graduate and Professional Students at Queen's. So that's, I think, just kind of a good role in organization in general. Then during my undergrad, I was president of the recreational figure skating club here at Queen's for a couple years, and figure skating is just something I've always been interested in, and this was a good way to kind of help develop my leadership skills with something that wasn't necessarily related to what I was studying, and just kind of in a situation that I was enjoying what I was doing. And then with the whole figure skating line of thought, throughout my undergrad, I was coaching at a local Learn to Skate program. So again, just helping to develop communication skills and just a lot of organization and teamwork skills, just a lot of transferable things outside of classwork. And then this year I decided that I was going to get away from teaching purely the learn to skate, and now I'm coaching with a Special Olympics program here in Kingston. So that's been a lot of fun. So I would definitely recommend that if you're interested in something, don't be afraid to pursue it during your university career, even if it's something not related to what you're studying, because it's a great way to build skills, but also can be a great release from just studying all the time, because it's really not healthy to be studying 24/7, as I've learned, unfortunately. So I think that's pretty much it for all the questions I had beforehand. If anyone has anything else, I'll stay on for a few minutes, I think. And you can just comment in the feed here and I can get to answering your questions. And if not, and if you think of a question later on, or if you're tuning into this after the fact, please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. You can email me. I'm pretty responsive on Facebook Messenger. Doesn't really matter to me. And then, yeah, if you have any questions, if you're thinking of grad school or anything, I can try to help give you some more advice on that and pointers of what to look for in a supervisor and that type of stuff too. All right. I don't see any more comments coming in here. But maybe I'll wait 2 more minutes in case anyone's typing. It looks like there are at least a few people tuning in, so that's good. I haven't just been talking to myself this whole time. All right, I think I'm gonna go ahead and end this now. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And hopefully you're keeping sane during this whole COVID situation.